Welcome back. Now, this is going to be good. Robert Spencer is the director of Jihad Watch, a world-renowned website monitoring and explaining radical Islam. He's the author of, my golly, 10 books, if not more, including the New York Times bestseller, The Truth About Muhammad, and The Politically Correct Guide to Islam and the Crusades. Now, I'm proud to say I've known Robert for some years, interviewed him several times, and I've never heard him say or write a violent word about Islam or Muslims. Very compassionate, very loving. He is, however, honest and informed. The Norwegian mass murderer, Anders Breivik, quoted many people in his 1,500-page manifesto, huge thing. I mean, they include Churchill, Gandhi, George Orwell, Naomi Klein, the Canadian sort of leftist, but also Robert Spencer. And because of this, the New York Times in particular has led a charge that Spencer is somehow partly responsible for the Oslo atrocity. Robert Spencer, welcome to you.
Thank you, Michael. It's great to be here.
Now, you've written extensively about Islam over the years, and I'm not here to be your publicist, but I've gone back through your work in the past couple of days. I've tried to find something that may be hateful or violent. Are you just hiding it very well?
Yes, I hide it extremely well. No, that's actually the kind of things that they say. They don't have anything they can quote from me, and so they make broad-based accusations that actually have no basis in fact. You know, the other night I was on Alan Colmes' show, and he said, you practice selection bias. You only quote the violent passages of the Quran and not the peaceful ones. And I said, Alan, in my book, The Complete Infidel's Guide to the Quran, I have an extensive study of the peaceful passages and an explanation of how Islamic scholars relate the peaceful passages to the violent ones. So this is completely false. But I know he got it from my Wikipedia bio. Yeah, and this is the level at which these people are operating. They are just making any false charges, hoping that they'll stick. Yeah. As you pointed out in your opening, you know, this guy is really all over the ideological map. And so to try to blame me, or to try to blame the work that I do, or the people that I work with, it's really just a kind of obvious attempt to stifle any resistance to the Islamic supremacist and leftist agendas.
All right. Well, being fair to the critics, let's quote some of the stuff. This is from page 644. Author Robert Spencer, director of the website Jihad Watch, who patiently monitors the spread of jihad terrorism across the world, is another excellent choice. He goes on page 545. He lists various Islamic opinions and then says, quote, it's easy to dismiss these ideas as marginal, but as Robert Spencer warns, even if there is no chance of establishing a worldwide caliphate, that doesn't mean that these groups aren't dangerous. I mean, he does, and he mentions you several other times, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. He mentions me, I think it's, you know, actually I've heard different numbers. Everybody has a different number. It's 55, 64, 46. Every news service has a different number, but he does mention me a good many times.
Now, the attacks on you, and you're used to attacks for goodness sake, and we should put this in context. I've had them. You probably had a lot more. Death threats, people trying to find you, promising death, all sorts of obscenities. I would think that happens to you on a pretty regular basis, doesn't it?
Yeah, actually, I've gotten 3 death threats after this from people saying that they're going to do to me what I did to the people in Norway.
Oh, good Lord. Now, just, I mean, I don't want to dwell on this, but do you alert the police, the FBI when this happens?
Yeah, they don't really care, to tell you the truth, but I do that. I do send it along to them.
Yeah. Oh, good Lord. Now,
this is not like the Council on American Islamic Relations. When they report a death threat, then that becomes national news. Because I guess maybe it's more of a man bites dog story. But everybody expects this kind of thing from Muslims, which is kind of strange since we're always clubbed over the head with the dogma that Islam is a religion of peace. But people seem to take for granted that Muslims are going to be violent and going to act in thuggish and intimidating manners.
Yeah. No, we're not naive here, and neither are our viewers. We know there is an agenda out there. That doesn't mean everybody in mainstream media has an agenda, but there is implicitly an agenda that people either pursue or they're sort of co-opted into being part of. But answer me this, for those who I suppose aren't aware of this. All sorts of people on the left were quoted. Naomi Klein, not approving of her, but quoting her and what she said about Milton Friedman. Gandhi, who was a very warlike character, of course, in a diaper. He was quoted. Churchill wasn't a Christian. Churchill was a great statesman. All sorts of people. George Orwell was quoted. But it only seems to be people like you, Mark Steyn, Melanie Phillips in the UK, who've warned of Islam. They're the ones, and who are conservative, who have been quoted as being partly responsible for what happened.
Well, see, this shows the manipulative agenda of the media outlets that are trying to blame us for this. That they could just as easily blame Barack Obama, whom he did quote approvingly.
Yep.
Or they could blame the radical environmentalist movement, since he plagiarized large sections of his manifesto from the Unabomber. But they don't want to demonize those people, they want to demonize us. And so they are being very selective themselves about what they pick out of this manifesto, which is very huge, and you can probably find all sorts of things in it, and are using that to tar the people they want to silence.
Now let's talk about what the long-term consequence is here, because we're not fools, even though they think we are. This is about, it's not about killing you, it's not about killing me, it's about silencing people. It's about claiming that certain websites lead to terror, thus we should control them. And I don't want people to think there that this is hyperbole and we're being hysterical. There's been for some years, and there still is, a concerted attempt to close down websites that warn perhaps of Islam or are conservative. And I believe within a year there will be legislation attempted, or at least a social climate attempted, to try and make sure that people like you, Robert, are not heard again.
Yeah, very much so, Michael. I see that coming. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation, which is 56 Muslim countries around the world, has been working at the UN for years to criminalize what it calls Islamophobia, which is really any honest examination of how Islamic jihadists use the texts and teachings of Islam to justify violence and supremacism. And they have gotten the UN to pass non-binding resolutions year after year, calling upon member states to enact criminal hate speech codes. And so I think that as we have now in the White House a president who's demonstrably no fan of free speech, and somebody who has appointed many, many people in his administration who have actively and explicitly spoken out in favor of restrictions on the freedom of speech, I wouldn't be in the least surprised if we see hate speech legislation in the next couple of years approved by the majority Obama justices at the Supreme Court, and allowing for the restriction of essentially opinions that are not politically correct.
Good Lord.